Good morning and welcome to Sunday Square Off. I'm Bram Resnick. 16 days till the August 28th primary. Several races are going down to the wire. One of them, the Democratic primary for governor. A Republican has occupied the office for the last decade. On today's show, a debate with the Democratic candidates who want to take it back. 3 Democrats are running for governor. State Senator Steve Farley, political newcomer Kelly Fryer, and the party's 2014 candidate for school superintendent, David Garcia. Farley lives in Tucson and has served in the legislature for 10 years. He owns a graphic design firm and is a strong advocate for public transportation. Kelly Fryer has homes in Tucson and Bisbee. She's the chief executive officer of the Southern Arizona YWCA. Fryer has also served as a pastor for Lutheran congregations, and she co-owns a wine and cheese shop. David Garcia lives in Phoenix. This is his second run for statewide office after the 2014 election. Garcia is an education professor at Arizona State University and an expert on school choice. He is a U.S. Army veteran. And joining us now, the 3 Democratic candidates for governor. Welcome to Square Off.
Thank you.
Let's give folks the ground rules today. There are no opening or closing statements on the show. I encourage a free-flowing discussion. I'll have questions. You may question each other. One important thing, I don't time the answers. I just ask that you be respectful of each other's time. And there is a warning, no filibusters, please. Okay, we stick to that. Let's get started. David Garcia, it's been a rough week for your campaign at the Netroots Nation gathering of progressives last weekend. You told the crowd, imagine a southern border without a wall. Your statement was interpreted as support for no border barrier. You later told me 2 days later you were talking about Trump's wall. More recently, digital director of your staff had some tweets that were awful on her timelines. Several offensive tweets. This one from January. I am from 5 generations of border crossers between this blank hole country and Mexico. Your digital director resigned a few hours after the tweets were reported. Doesn't a governor have to carefully weigh his or her words in regard to that border wall and in regard to that staffer? Doesn't a governor have to carefully vet staffers?
Sure, absolutely. And with respect...
So what happened here?
Well, let's start with the idea of Trump's wall. The Netroots discussion was interpreted by the Republican Governors Association as something other than what it is intended to be, and that is against Trump's wall.
In fairness, it wasn't just the RGA. That was a very open question. If you don't say what you're talking about, exactly what you're talking about,
well, what I'm talking about,
it's wide open to interpretation.
Appreciate it. And I'm talking specifically about Trump's wall. I stand against Trump's wall. I believe that Trump's wall is sending the wrong message to the United States and to Arizona. And we have to have a situation as Arizona governor to have a productive relationship with Mexico. It's our biggest trading partner. And so I believe that Trump's wall would be detrimental to Arizona and stand against it.
Do you believe there should be a border barrier?
Absolutely.
In the case of your staffer, what happened? What does that tell us about the discipline on your campaign and what you would bring to the governor's office?
It's unfortunate. We had a staffer who, on her personal account years ago, posted some remarks that are not reflective of our campaign, and she has resigned. Some as recently as
a few months ago.
Again, she has resigned. And so from my perspective, this was on her personal account, not reflected on the campaign, and she has resigned.
End of story.
End of story.
Are you sure you vetted everybody else in your campaign?
Well, we're certainly vetting without question.
Kelly Fryer, in a recent debate, you rejected what you described as the narrative about our border from the moderators. So as a moderator, at risk of drawing more questions, as I understand it, you say this shouldn't be a discussion about security, but more about human rights. Do I have that right?
What I'm saying is that when we begin the conversation around the border from a place of security, as opposed to solutions, we need border solutions, we need border strategies. But when we start from a place where we're talking about security, we're really buying into the narrative that the biggest problem on our border is crime. The biggest problem on our border is not crime. There isn't more crime on the border than there is any place else in the country.
Is it drugs?
I think there's a racist narrative about who's trying to come back and forth across our border, and I think we need to shift the conversation and really look at all of the issues that we face. And right at this moment, the biggest problem on our border is the humanitarian crisis, the human rights disaster that is being created by the policies of this current Trump administration.
So How big a problem is drugs coming over the border?
Look, we have crime everywhere in this country.
But specifically when it comes to the border.
Bram, there are children right now in detention centers here in Phoenix, in Mesa, and in Tucson who are being sexually abused by people on our payroll, unaccompanied minors who have been detained for profit in our state. I want to know why we aren't more concerned about those kids than we are about the issues that you're talking about. That's what I'm saying. That should be our #1 priority right now.
Going to move on. Steve Farley, I'll talk to you about immigration a little later. I want to ask you something else. You were late to endorse the Invest in Ed initiative that grew out of the Red for Ed movement. It would boost income taxes on people who earn more than $250,000 a year or more. It still hasn't been approved for the ballot. Why did you wait till mid-July to commit to this initiative that would raise teacher pay?
I didn't feel a need to get in front of the teachers who are already in front of this. The Red for Ed movement is a genuine grassroots movement, and I'm grateful for their presence and what they're doing to advocate for sorely needed public education funding in Arizona.
Do you have problems?
But I didn't want to make this about my campaign.
Well, okay. Do you have problems with this initiative and the idea of raising taxes?
Well, I will always support every form of funding that goes to support our public schools, because a kid can't delay their education until we have adequate funding. That's why I've supported Prop 123, even though I had serious problems with that funding mechanism and some of the things that Doug Ducey put in there that actually could put it at risk in future years. But I will always support, and I have always supported, money for public education. I think there are better options, such as closing corporate tax loopholes. We have $10 billion a year that we spend on everything as a state, and we give away $13.7 billion a year in corporate sales tax loopholes alone. If we could eliminate just $3 billion worth of those, we could lower our sales tax rate by a full % while increasing education spending by $2 billion a year. That isn't to say that I don't support Invest in Ed. I do. It's important to get the funding where it comes, and I want us to be able to decide as voters whether or not that should be where we get it.
So you support a tax increase as part of Invest in Ed to raise money for teachers? Yes or no?
I support what the voters will decide on.
So you're being very careful about talking about a tax increase.
I think there are good options. But even if Invest in Ed passes, we're going to need more funding, because this only gets us up to where we were spending in 2008. We have community colleges funding that we need to restore. We have university funding we need to restore. We have building renewal funding we need to restore. There are good ways, without raising taxes, to be able to increase money to invest in ourselves.
Okay, and we'll get to that a little bit later. When we come back, how the candidates would deal with school vouchers, charter schools, and tuition tax credits. Then later, should Arizona's private prisons be shut down? Stay with us.